We come to you guys with another breaking news story as Rishi Sunak faces even more problems in regards to his key Brexit vote in Parliament tomorrow, as we've had the Brexiteer MP and the chairman of the European Research Group, Francois, making a very important announcement in relation to this vote. We've also had the European Scrutiny Committee deciding to summon the government to answer some very, very uncomfortable questions. But first things first, let's go to Francois and see what he had to say in regards to the positions of the Brexiteer Tory MPs in Parliament who are going to be voting against the deal.
Commenting on the release of the legal assessment of the Windsor Framework, the ERG chairman, Francois, said, I'd like to thank the Star Chamber, chaired by Sir Bill Cash MP and ably supported by Martin Howe KC, Barnabas Reynolds and David Jones MP, for their diligent and thorough examination of the legal implications of the Windsor Framework. The Star Chamber's principal findings are that EU law will still be supreme in Northern Ireland. The rights of its people under the 1800 Act of Union are not restored. The Green Lane is not really a green lane at all. The Stormont Break is practically useless, and the framework itself has no exit other than through a highly complex legal process.
Good point.
That is a very brief summary of the findings of the Star Chamber. You should hopefully all have a copy of the report with a press release, and there's a nice diagram on the back that shows you how the Stormont Break, in theory at least, is meant to work.
Okay, so the most important part of this announcement was the document that they had now received from the Star Chamber, and Bill Cash does prove that the integrity of the Union, the United Kingdom, is not protected. The European Court of Justice remains in place in Northern Ireland, which we already knew and we already reported on the channel. But the key points that he mentioned, Francois, was on the Stormont Break, which is the technical mechanism that gives Britain and Northern Ireland to be able to either veto or delay or scrutinise EU laws. That's just basically a gimmick. And he also talked about the so-called green lane. Obviously, I mentioned this on the channel so many times. You technically get a green lane and a red lane. The green lane is for products that is just meant to be traded between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, so inside the UK family. That's not really green, considering that you have to be on a verified list and pre-approved list. And there's no guarantee that some of the stuff on the green lane would not be dragged onto the red lane, which is the lane that could go to the EU, the Republic of Ireland. This is the problem. So because of that, the EU Scrutiny Committee have decided to summon the government. Initially, they asked Rishi Sunak, we're going to get into that in a second, but the government are sending the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Chris Heaton-Harris, to be grilled by the MPs on this issue. And of course, as they tried to ask Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, to attend, Rishi Sunak decided to ignore and didn't want to get scrutinized on this issue. And so Bill Cash was not really happy about the Prime Minister's decisions to snub the committee. It's not really a good look, obviously, when it comes to these sort of issues. You have to be able to respect parliamentary scrutiny, but that's not really the case. But they are sending Chris Heaton-Harris, the Northern Ireland Secretary of State. It's a start, I guess. But at the same time, Bill Cash is not happy. He said, Parliament should not be railroaded into a deal that it has not had a sufficient time to come to an educated choice over whether to proceed or renegotiate, which will be unlikely to happen if the government were to rush ahead, particularly if the EU wishes to do so. MPs in the House must have a meaningful chance at input before it happens. Well, I agree with Sir Bill Cash. You have to have enough time to scrutinise. And if those who say, well, we don't have time, we have to go in a rush. We've been in this situation for years now when it comes to the Northern Ireland protocol. I'm sure you can wait another few days to have proper accountability an actual process. Now, Mark Francois has created a bit of a problem for Rishi Sunak because he's now decided to send all these documents that he's had to every single member of parliament, especially the Tory MPs. And so, of course, it's an attempt to change some of their minds on this issue. Now, the EU and the UK government are going to be meeting on Friday, and it's going to be a very important meeting. This is about the joint committee that they've created since Brexit. So based on the withdrawal agreement, the Brexit deal, both sides now have this joint committee, technically. And the referee of the joint committee is actually on the EU side, which is quite fascinating. It's very impartial, very, very neutral. But at the same time, they're going to be meeting on Friday. The European Union are putting pressure on the British government to get it sorted by Friday. So basically implement the Windsor Framework, or prepare to implement the Windsor Framework. They're going to be reviewing a number of other things as well. But the second point is an update on the withdrawal agreement implementation in accordance with Article 164 of the withdrawal agreement. So the second point is they're going to be talking about citizens' rights and everything else, to give an update. But the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland, so basically the Windsor Framework, the European Union are going to go to this meeting and ask Rishi Sunak, so, are you ready? Have you done it yet? Have you decided to shut your Brexiteer Tory MPs up so we could actually get on with the job? That's basically the attitude from the European Union. They don't really care about parliamentary scrutiny or any accountability in that sense. They'd rather if you just get on with it, which is a bit of a problem considering there are enough people in Northern Ireland who are not happy about this. You can't really just do it against the will of the people. But let's talk about this joint committee. The role of this joint committee is quite fascinating. And so thanks to the Institute for Government, we've got this document that shows one of the powers that this joint committee has is actually they can make amendments to the deal, to parts of the agreement. Same thing applies to other trade agreements and relationships. For example, the EU-Canada Joint Committee can amend the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, as well as its protocols. So they always had this ability. But of course, since Brexit and since the transition period, the European Union kept going around saying, well, we can't really make changes anymore. This is it. This is final. Well, it's not really final, is it? Considering you can make amendments any moment. And this is the UK-EU Joint Committee's map or guide. They've got so many subcommittees underneath. It's created bureaucracy over bureaucracy, which is quite fascinating. I get the importance of having separate divisions, like one area for citizens' rights, financial provisions, Northern Ireland. But you got this joint committees under each, especially under Northern Ireland, which is very, very complicated because it's a complex issue. And you can see it goes further down on the page. If a dispute is raised, the committee resolves disputes through consultation. It takes 3 months. If it's a yes, then fine, dispute is resolved. If it's a no, then the joint committee would refer the dispute to the arbitration panel. Then, if is the dispute the EU law related? If it is, then it goes to the left side. Then obviously the panel will refer the questions to European Court of Justice. And if it's a no, then arbitration panel would give assessment and parties would accept the assessment. So essentially, it goes down to, if you don't really sort things out, it gets to the European Court of Justice. So much for impartiality, guys. Okay, so this is where we are now. And you can see actually at the end, if the dispute is resolved, then it's fine. If not, then it goes back to both parties, UK and EU, have to accept the assessment. If they don't, then they can refer the dispute to the PCA, the Permanent Court of Arbitration, and then they do a bit of a ruling on that issue. Then you're going to have to accept the ruling. What's the point? Okay. Anyway, this is the latest update that we have today for you guys on this. Tomorrow, we're going to have a special day and show for you guys because we're going to have Boris Johnson's Privileges Committee. We're also going to have the Rishi Sunak's Brexit vote. So throughout the day, I'm going to probably do a bit of a long live stream, bit of break in between, and of course all the other news updates for you guys. But if you want to follow everything that's going on in Parliament, make sure to stay tuned on this channel instead of watching BBC or Sky. It's much better here. I'm Mahyar, Tousi, and we are the media.